Clara Benson thought she was just making friends online, escaping the loneliness of her small suburban life through late-night chats and harmless secrets. But when her reflection started typing back, she realized the Haven wasn't just another chat room. It was a trap, one that watched, listened, and waited for her to disappear. Clara Benson's disappearance was the kind of story that didn't make sense to anyone who knew her. She was 16, quiet and careful, someone who always texted her parents if she'd be even 5 minutes late. That Thursday evening in 2016 started like any other. She had dinner with her family, joked about her upcoming exams, and went upstairs to study. An hour later, her mother knocked on the door to offer tea. There was no answer. The door was unlocked, but the room was empty. The only clue was her phone, lying on her pillow with the screen still glowing faintly. At first, her parents assumed she had gone for a walk or to a friend's house. But by midnight, when her bed was still untouched, panic set in. The police were called and the search began. Neighbors, friends, and even classmates joined in, but there was no trace of her. The strangest part was her phone activity. The chat app she had been using before she vanished wasn't one anyone recognized. It wasn't WhatsApp, Messenger, or any social platform her friends used. The logo was a faded white door against a dark background, and the name simply said The Haven. Investigators started digging into her phone records and found that for the past 6 months, Clara had been spending hours every night inside that chat room. The logs were full of usernames, no real names, no locations. People called themselves things like Shadow Mirror, Whispered Truth, and The Caretaker. At first, the messages seemed harmless, full of jokes and late-night rambling. But the deeper they went, the stranger it became. Conversations turned darker, more cryptic. People wrote about tests, truth circles, and mirror sessions. The last message Clara received was short and chilling. "I can show you something no one else knows." The police questioned her friends, but none of them had ever heard of the Haven. One of her closest classmates said Clara had started acting distant, skipping lunch and looking tired. She'd once mentioned she was part of an exclusive group online where people understood her better. No one thought much of it at the time. That clue, combined with the phone data, led investigators to focus entirely on the mysterious chat room. When the police tried to access the site from her phone, it was gone. The app crashed each time they opened it, but digital forensic experts managed to retrieve partial data. The messages were stored on servers bouncing through different countries, impossible to trace directly. What they did recover, though, painted a disturbing picture. Every night at exactly 2 a.m., a private chat room link appeared, sent only to certain users. Clara had joined those sessions for several weeks before disappearing. After each one, she deleted parts of the chat history manually. Her parents remembered her leaving a notebook on her desk. It seemed ordinary at first, pages of doodles and half-written poetry. But toward the back were strange symbols and lists of usernames. Scrawled between them were phrases like mirror challenge and don't tell them yet. Some lines looked like codes or coordinates. Detectives began to suspect she had uncovered something dangerous or been manipulated into something she didn't understand. As the investigation grew, police discovered that Clara wasn't the first person in Maple Hollow to vanish mysteriously. 2 other teenagers had gone missing over the past 2 years, both labeled runaways. Their digital histories were incomplete, but fragments of their online data contained the same word: Haven. The cases were too similar to ignore. With Clara's disappearance, detectives finally had a way to look deeper. Using her recovered login, they accessed what was left of her account. A list of users appeared, most offline, but one profile was still active: The Caretaker. That name kept surfacing in old messages, often mentioned with reverence or fear. It was always "The Caretaker will guide us," or "wait for his signal." When the investigators clicked the name, A message popped up instantly. You shouldn't be here. Seconds later, the screen went black. The account was deleted. That night, one of the officers monitoring the phone claimed to hear faint static before the app closed, like a voice trying to speak through interference. Whether it was a glitch or something else, no one could explain. But from that moment on, the Haven became more than a missing persons case. It became a doorway into something no one could easily define. What started as an innocent chat room now looked like the beginning of a nightmare that had just begun. The police created a digital trap to reach whoever was behind the Haven. Using a new identity under the name Echo, they crafted a believable teenage persona, complete with fake photos, school interests, and a backstory that fit the type of users the chat room seemed to attract. For days, nothing happened. Echo's messages floated in empty threads, unanswered or ignored. Then one night, a message appeared on the screen. It came from a user called Caretaker. The text was polite but unsettling. It simply said, "Welcome, Echo. Are you ready to see the truth?" Investigators watched closely as the chat continued. Caretaker spoke in riddles, asking Echo about loneliness, fear, and what it felt like to be unseen. To the untrained eye, it might have looked like a late-night therapy conversation, but the questions were too deliberate, too probing. Each message seemed designed to learn more about Echo's personality, testing for vulnerability. The moderators monitoring the account began to notice that the chat room seemed to shift the more Echo interacted. New sections appeared that hadn't been visible before: hidden forums, old message logs, and strange countdowns to sessions. After several days of building trust, Caretaker invited Echo to join the inner circle. Entry required a personal token. Users were told to upload something meaningful, a secret, a confession, or an image that represented truth. Echo's team uploaded a blurred childhood photo, pretending it was from an old camera. Within minutes, the message "accepted" appeared, followed by a new link labeled Mirror Room 02. The time set for entry was 2:00 a.m. The investigators knew this was the same time Clara had been logging in before she disappeared. They gathered a team to observe what would happen next. As the clock struck 2, the chat room transformed. The usual text feed vanished, replaced by a black window that flickered and then opened into a live stream. The feed showed a dimly lit basement. A single bulb swung from the ceiling, casting uneven shadows over the concrete floor. Strange symbols were drawn on the walls, circles with vertical slashes through them. In the center of the room sat a large cracked mirror leaning against the wall. No one appeared in the video, but the chat messages flooded in from users reacting with words like "it's starting" and "he's here." Then a faint whisper came through the audio. It wasn't clear at first, but after adjusting the volume, investigators could hear a distorted voice repeating the phrase, "Face your reflection." Moments later, the stream ended abruptly. Forensic experts tried to trace the live feed. The IP address bounced through multiple foreign servers before ending in an abandoned factory zone on the outskirts of Maple Hollow. It was an area locals avoided, an old textile plant shut down years earlier. The police decided to investigate. When they entered the property, the place looked untouched. Dust covered everything, and there were no signs of recent human presence until they reached the basement. There they found the faint outline of symbols drawn in white chalk on the walls. The same cracked mirror from the video lay face down on the ground, its glass shattered across the concrete. But what disturbed the team most was the faint smell of burned electronics and melted plastic. In the corner, half buried under debris, were pieces of a camera tripod and a scorched laptop casing. Someone had been there recently and left in a hurry. As evidence was collected, a new alert appeared on Echo's account. It was another message from Caretaker. "You came too close. Some doors aren't meant to be opened." Before the team could respond, the message deleted itself, and the user vanished from the chat. The entire chat room went offline moments later, leaving only an error code on the screen. For a brief moment, investigators thought they had reached the end of the trail. But the next day, the Haven returned under a different name with the same users already logged in. It was as if nothing had happened. Only one new message appeared pinned at the top. The reflection cannot be destroyed. It only moves. That single sentence changed everything. It suggested the Haven wasn't just a chat room. It was part of something larger, something designed to survive, even when one version was shut down. Investigators began to suspect that the Haven wasn't controlled by a single person at all, but by a network that rebuilt itself each time it was exposed. Somewhere within that system, the caretaker was still watching, waiting for the next echo to appear. A week after the factory raid, a new post appeared on an underground forum connected to the Haven. It was titled, "Welcome Back, Clara." The post contained a link to a short, low-quality video file. When investigators opened it, the screen flickered before revealing a dimly lit room. A young girl sat on a wooden chair, her head lowered. Even through the grainy resolution, they recognized her. The same long hair, the same denim jacket Clara had worn the night she disappeared. Her face was hidden in shadow, but her trembling hands were visible on her lap. A distorted voice spoke from somewhere off-screen, asking her questions about truth, the circle, and the mirror. She nodded slightly each time, but never spoke. Then, just before the footage cut to static, she lifted her head and looked straight at the camera. The video was barely 30 seconds long, but it sent a wave of panic through the investigation team. Forensic experts tried to extract metadata from the file, but the details were wiped clean. The only clue was a background sound, a faint dripping like water hitting metal. It matched the factory basement they had searched earlier. That meant whoever had uploaded the video had returned there after the police left. The FBI was brought in, and a full-scale cyber investigation began. As agents tracked deeper into the web, they discovered that the Haven wasn't a single chat room but one node in a much larger network known as the Garden. Each branch of the Garden had its own theme: the Haven for confessions, the Orchard for games, the Mirror House for rituals, and the Roots for private exchanges. All were connected by the same shadowy administrator, the caretaker. Data analysis showed a disturbing pattern. The caretaker system used machine learning tools to identify users showing signs of depression, loneliness, or social isolation. Those users received personalized invitations to private chats where the manipulation began. At first, the messages seemed caring, offering comfort or understanding. But slowly they shifted into something darker, encouraging users to share private information or perform reflection challenges to prove their trust. Once a user passed a certain point, they were invited into the mirror room. After that, most accounts went silent. By now, authorities had linked the Garden to at least 13 missing person cases across different states. All victims had joined the same cycle, lured into deeper levels until they vanished completely. The network operated with frightening precision, shifting servers and disguising its code faster than investigators could track. Every attempt to shut it down led to another version reappearing somewhere else. One cyber expert noticed something strange in the recovered data. Every version of the Haven contained an encrypted folder labeled Caretaker Seed. Inside, there was always one image: a blurry photo of a person standing before a mirror, their reflection slightly distorted. When digital filters were applied, a faint second figure could be seen behind the reflection, almost blending into the background. No one could determine if it was an illusion or something real. Meanwhile, Clara's parents were notified of the new video. They refused to believe she was gone. The father insisted she was still alive. held somewhere by the people behind the garden. But the more evidence appeared, the less hopeful the investigation seemed. There were no ransom demands, no traceable money transfers, only messages hinting at a disturbing ideology about transcendence through reflection. Weeks passed, and the online activity grew quieter. The haven seemed dormant. Then one night, a live notification appeared on a dormant user account belonging to one of the missing teens. The title of the stream was The Final Reflection. The video showed the same basement now filled with several mirrors placed in a circle. A shadow moved briefly across the screen, and then the broadcast cut to black. Moments later, the chat room began to flood with new users posting the same sentence repeatedly. She stepped through. The FBI's trace on that live feed led to a new location miles away, a small house near the river. When agents arrived, the place was empty except for one thing left in the middle of the floor, a mirror with the words "Welcome, Echo" scratched faintly across the glass. It was clear the caretaker had anticipated every move, staying one step ahead. Whatever the haven truly was, it wasn't over. It was evolving, waiting for the next message to appear. The discovery of the mirror marked a turning point in the investigation. The FBI formed a special unit dedicated entirely to dismantling the garden network. The team worked around the clock, tracing encrypted pathways and monitoring dark web forums for any sign of movement. Then, in a breakthrough moment, one analyst found a connection between the garden servers and a rented storage facility just outside town. The storage unit had been paid for in cash, registered under a fake name. It was a small, windowless space, and when agents opened it, the stale air reeked of burned electronics. Inside were rows of dismantled computer parts, melted SIM cards, and stacks of printed chat logs. On a desk sat a folder labeled Caretaker. The contents of that folder chilled everyone who saw them. There were screenshots of chatroom conversations, transcripts of users confessing their darkest thoughts, and digital images of dozens of teenagers, all taken through their webcams. Each file included a timestamp and a list of responses from the caretaker, almost like psychological notes. The messages read like studies of human behavior, mapping fear, guilt, and dependency, but buried among the files was one document that stood out. It was titled The Final Mirror. The document outlined an upcoming event set for October 31st, described as the night the chosen see themselves. It included a countdown clock and GPS coordinates. Investigators suspected it was the next phase of the group's plan, something ritualistic in tone. Every clue pointed back to the idea of reflection, the word repeated endlessly through all of the haven's messages. The FBI believed this so-called final mirror was a gathering or recording meant to lure another victim. As Halloween approached, the team prepared for the worst. Surveillance was installed near the location listed in the document, a stretch of abandoned warehouses on the outskirts of the city. Cameras, motion sensors, and undercover vehicles surrounded the site, but from the outside everything seemed silent. When midnight came, no one appeared. Hours passed, and just when agents began to suspect a false lead, computers at headquarters lit up with a notification. The haven was active again. Thousands of users were logging in under new aliases, and the familiar countdown appeared, 2:00 a.m. As the digital clock hit 0, the live feed reappeared on every screen. It showed a room illuminated by a single candle. A mirror stood in the center, reflecting nothing but darkness. The chat filled with comments, users typing phrases like "the moment is here" and "he's returned." Then faint movement appeared in the reflection. A tall figure in a mask leaned forward, touching the mirror's surface. The feed began to distort, lines of static crawling across the image. A second later, the camera angle changed, showing the reflection of a police badge. Someone inside the room had a live connection to the investigators' own devices. Panic erupted in the control room. The signal was coming from the very warehouse they were monitoring. Within seconds, agents stormed the building. They rushed down into the basement and found a setup of cameras, cables, and glowing monitors broadcasting the same feed. But the room was empty. The air was heavy with dust. The candle still flickering beside the cracked mirror. On one of the screens was a message looping in white letters. "You can't catch a reflection." Before the agents could disconnect the devices, every monitor went dark at once. The feed vanished from the web, and all connections to the garden collapsed. Digital forensics later found traces of a self-destructing code, something that wiped entire servers the moment the broadcast ended. It was as if the network had been designed to die on command. The warehouse investigation yielded no fingerprints, no DNA, nothing but a few fragments of burned circuitry and a torn mask left behind. The caretaker was gone, his digital empire erased within seconds, but the timing was too deliberate, too precise to be a coincidence. It wasn't destruction. It was relocation. Somewhere, new code was already forming, waiting to resurface under another name. In the weeks that followed, the havens mentioned disappeared from the internet entirely. But late one night, an analyst monitoring deep web traffic noticed a familiar symbol, flashing briefly across a new Chatrooms login page. A small, faded white door against a black background. It lasted only a few seconds before the site vanished. The caretaker hadn't been defeated. He had simply found another mirror to step through. Months passed after the warehouse incident, but the sense of unease never faded. The investigation remained open, yet no new leads surfaced. The caretaker had vanished without a trace, leaving only fragments of his digital creation behind. Agents continued to monitor the dark web, watching for any sign of the garden's return. Then, one ordinary morning, Clara's parents received a plain brown envelope in their mailbox. There was no stamp, no address, no note, just a small USB drive inside. The only marking on it was a single word written in black ink: Clara. When the FBI analyzed the contents, they found a collection of short video clips, all filmed outdoors. The footage was shaky, as if recorded by hand. It showed Clara walking along a wooded path under dim morning light. Her clothes were clean, her face calm but unreadable. She never spoke during any of the clips. In one, she knelt by a riverbank and placed her hand in the water. In another, she stared directly at the camera for several seconds, her expression vacant. The final video was the shortest of them all, just Clara looking into a mirror propped against a tree trunk. Her lips moved as if she were saying something, but there was no sound. Then the video ended abruptly. Experts enhanced the footage and concluded she had whispered, "He's still here." Those 3 words reignited the entire case. The FBI scoured the area around the river, comparing the trees and rocks to landmarks in the video. They found no signs of Clara, no mirror, no evidence of a filming location. It was as if the videos had been made only to be found, not to provide answers. Digital traces suggested the files had been uploaded to an encrypted drive days before the envelope arrived, using a connection routed through multiple countries. Whoever sent it knew exactly how to hide their path. The release of the videos caused a wave of online speculation. Forums and amateur investigators began piecing together theories, claiming the haven had evolved into a new hidden network. Some users claimed to have seen the white door symbol flicker across obscure sites for a few seconds before disappearing. Others said they received strange emails with subject lines that read, "Do you want to see yourself?" Law enforcement dismissed most of it as internet hysteria, but deep down, investigators knew that the caretaker's influence might still linger somewhere unseen. As weeks turned into months, the official case file on the haven was quietly moved into cold storage. Public attention faded and life in Maple Hollow returned to its normal rhythm. Yet Clara's parents never stopped searching. They kept the USB drive locked away, unable to destroy it but terrified to watch the videos again. Sometimes late at night, they claimed to hear faint sounds coming from the old computer where the footage had been analyzed. A clicking noise, like someone typing, followed by static. Technicians checked the device repeatedly and found nothing wrong. But the family eventually stopped using that computer altogether. Meanwhile, in another city hundreds of miles away, a high school student named Riley joined a new online chat room called The Doorway. It was a small community of late-night users sharing secrets and stories. Everything seemed harmless at first, but after a few days, Riley noticed that one of the moderators kept sending private messages at 2 a.m. The username was Caretaker02. Each message ended with the same phrase: "Look into the mirror. Tell me what you see." When investigators later learned of Riley's disappearance, the case felt hauntingly familiar. The website hosting The Doorway had already vanished, its servers erased within hours of the report being filed. Once again, there were no clues, no traces, only silence. And just like before, those who had joined the chat room claimed they had seen a faint image appear behind the text box during their last session, a reflection of someone watching through their webcam. The FBI revived the old Haven files, but even their top cyber team could find no sign of the original network. Every digital path led to blank spaces, encrypted tunnels, and redirected IPs that circled endlessly. Some agents believed the caretaker was a single man who had perfected his methods. Others thought he was no longer human at all, that the garden had grown into a self-sustaining system, feeding on data and reproducing itself. Today, the official record of the Haven ends with the same unresolved conclusion. Clara Benson was never found. Neither were the others. Each time the network disappears, it resurfaces months later under a new name, a new disguise, waiting for someone curious enough to step inside. Experts warn that the pattern is always the same: an invitation, a test, a reflection. And when the final message appears, you're ready to see the truth. It's already too late. No one knows where the caretaker is or if he was ever just one person. But those who've studied the case believe he's still out there, hidden behind another username, waiting for the next lost soul to look into the digital mirror and vanish into its reflection.